All right, welcome back, guys. So in this chapter, we're gonna talk about how we're gonna set up Apache NiFi development environment using Amazon EC2 instance. And let's jump into it. If you haven't done yet so, or if this is the first time you're watching one of my tutorials, make sure you go to this repo and you clone it locally. We're gonna everything is gonna be here. So basically, you're gonna be able to run the scripts as I'm also running them and we go through them. So just a quick review. Last chapter, we show how we can go through a local installation setup where we have a NiFi Registry, Toolkit, and also Jenkins, which is not present in the design, installed locally, how they can be stop, start, how can all these components can be linked together. And this is the scenario where you have a strong machine and you can, let's say, afford from the perspective of disk, CPU, and RAM to have all these services running locally. If that's not the case and you want to, let's say, give them more resources, then we're going to employ Amazon Cloud to do that for us. So this is going to be our setup. We're going to connect using the Amazon client, again, using a key. We're going to connect to Amazon Cloud. We're going to build up an EC2 instance, which is pretty much elastic compute. That think about it as compute on the cloud. Once there, we're going to install, it's going to be an Ubuntu machine. We're going to install Docker Community Edition on Ubuntu. And then we're going to have a Jenkins container, NiFi registry container, and 3 instances of NiFi, which we're going to call them prod, staging, and dev. Pretty much simulate an enterprise NiFi environment, I would say, where you have Jenkins that you use to do your CI/CD. You have registry that serves as a GitHub repository, let's say, sort of. And then you have your instances where you dev, where you're developing, your staging, where you're like a pre-prod, where you have closer data to prod, and then finally production, which is, I would say, something that you don't touch manually where you go click and drag on the canvas. Basically, it's done through CI/CD. So let's jump into it and see how we can do that. If you already have cloned this repository on your machine, then this is pretty much setup. First, we have to populate this config.sh file with a few parameters. Basically, the MEI that we are going to use to build up our EC2 instance. This is specific to my region, so be mindful of that. So my region is Southeast 2. If you're in app Southwest East 2, if you're in some other region, then make sure you have the same version of Ubuntu, and it's respective of this MEI in my region. My VPC value, so you have to give your VPC value. The instance type that I choose to run my compute on, in this case, is going to be a T3X large, which is fairly okay. And the key name that we want to use to create this connectivity from a local to the on-cloud instance. If you want to go the easy way out without having to understand what happens in the script that I build, you just run the setup.sh, and this will pretty much will end up creating all the resources and then give you a feedback on what is where in terms of URLs and how you can access them. Finally, as a note, Jenkins, we have to complete the Jenkins plugin installation in the browser. I didn't went into massive amounts of work to make Jenkins automatically install the plugins and import the pipelines. The main reason is that I feel that we should be aware how that happens, and I didn't want to invest too much time in it. I think it's not worth my time for it. All right, so let's jump into it. So right now, what I'll do, I'm gonna go to my Amazon account. If you don't have one yet, go ahead and do one, and make sure you also have your Amazon client installed. I have a link, and I have a link on how to do that, and I'll put them in the description if somebody needs help around that. So we're gonna go to EC2 in this case, and we can see we don't have any instances currently running. So let's jump back. Let's jump into my Visual Code. Sorry about it. And I already have my say repository download it, clone notes. So we're gonna go to EC2, and this is the folder that you're gonna install it. So first, we're gonna go to config, and this is where this is the values that I meant. Basically, this is gonna set up some variables that are gonna be consumed by the setup script. Right, so first thing what we're gonna do, we're gonna run this script. This script is gonna set some of the parameters. We're gonna go back into the config.sh. We can see that we manually set some parameters, and you also have to do it on your machine. Basically, identify your VPC. I could have done that programmatically, but in what happens here, I didn't want to do it. I guess thinking about now, I should have done it where you programmatically get this VPC ID, but never mind, which is your default VPC. The AMI, the instance size, and the key name that I choose. So let's run this one. And once we're going to do this, first what we're going to do, we are going to check if those variables were exposed to us. So let's go and say, sometimes it doesn't work properly. Okay, so he didn't do it. So basically this doesn't work. What I'll do, I'll probably run them manually. Most likely because this will work if it's in a single bash run. If it's manually done, it will not work. So let's go and do this. And let's retry to do an echo. Yeah, so now we have all the values. Going back to the script, I'll put a note there, basically. So this is pretty much, the script was created to be in a single run. And I'll also demonstrate that. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go to a step of the script where we're trying to delete previous resources with the same names, because otherwise the whole script will fail. So basically here we're looking for the key name that we chose, make sure that it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, we get rid of it. If the instance that has a particular tag in it, which I'm going to talk about, the tag exists, then we're going to delete it. If the IP address are allocated, then we're going to release them, and so on. Right. All right, so we can see that no EC2 with demo NiFi tag, no EIP with demo NiFi tag were found, obviously because this is a fresh install that we're doing. And first thing, first step, what we're going to do, we are going to create a key. So basically, we're going to create a key and download the key material locally. And we're going to call that the key name that we chose. So be mindful, because we're downloading it into our root repository outside of the repository. So right now we can see we have this inside by demo. You can call it whatever you want. And we're going to use this key to actually log into newly created EC2. Right. Now that we have this key, we're going to get a public ID. We're going to find the public subnet ID that we're going to use. So basically, if you look at this command, we describe the subnet in my VPC and make sure that it's a public subnet. And we get the subnet IP. Right. And then capture the value from it. So if we're going to do an echo on subnet underscore ID, we can see that that's going to be our subnet ID. It's going to be used to build up. Next thing, we're going to create a security group. So the security group here, I'm going to go to the command really quick. We're going to call the security group demo NiFi. We're going to give it a description, and we're going to attach it to this VPC, our VPC. We're going to say, okay, it's going to be created in my VPC, right? So I'm going to go and run this command. And this command also will capture the new created security group ID, because we're going to use that when we're going to create the instance. So sorry about it. So it's echo, if we want to see it, what is it called? SG underscore ID. All right, so that's good. Next thing, what we're going to do, we're going to allocate a new public IP. So this is the command, allocate address. This is going to allocate us an address. And this EIP is pretty much a body response from this Amazon is to allocate command. So if you look here, EIP, we're going to get a JSON body. And then down here with the JQ command, that's another thing. Make sure you have the JQ command installed. It's fairly straightforward. If you're on Mac, brew install JQ. If you're on Linux, yum or apt to install them. Then we're going to capture these two values, the public IP and the allocation ID. So see, we have a public IP and the allocation ID. All right, so now we have these values captured. So if we're gonna do echo public IP, that's our public IP and allocation ID. By the way, if this is boring for you and you want to move forward, feel free to speed up the video. Next thing, what we're going to do, because I know some people might be like, oh, God damn it, I know this already. I know, I understand. I'm the same, you know, I like to go in a rush. I personally, I would run it in the in a single script. But sometimes there are some people who want to understand what's happening there and also understand the thought process of building this. Next thing, what we're going to do, we're going to tag the IP. And the reason I want to tag the IP and the resources we create, because we have some utility scripts here. So if we're going to go to scripts and utility scripts, we have some utility scripts that will help us start, stop the resources, and then do some cleanup. Basic stuff, you know? And we use the tags to actually enable those scripts to work properly. Now we're gonna tag the new allocated IP. And next thing, using the security group that we just created, we're going to create some inbound rules. So basically, if you look at this inbound rule, first, what I want to do, I want to capture my local IP that is recognized from the external world. So if I'll do an echo on my local IP, this is my local IP at the moment. And I want to add that local IP to be able to receive and communicate on all ports and all services on that machine. And at the same time, I want to do the same for its public IP. So this way, only me and the instance can communicate to the instance. All right, so now that is done. If we want to go to EC2 and make sure that those things happening, so first, elastic IP. All right, created as we thought, and it's tagged with the tags we wanted. Security group. If we're going to go here, let's find it. Demo NiFi, that's ours. Yep, it's not tagged because we use the name of it. All right, so far, that's what we have. We don't have any instance yet created. Next, we're going to create the instance. So basically, we only want one instance of the type that we chose in our configuration is going to be using this key that we chose, which is inside by demo in my case. The AMI ID that's going to be used, and the security group, which we added the inbound rule, and the subnet ID that we chose from as being public. And another thing I'm doing here, so I'm tagging, so I'm giving the value of name demo NiFi. Again, for the later on, we're going to use it to clean up and better manage. And another thing I do here at the end, basically, I'm telling the setup that I want my default root EBS. So don't start with a default value. I think it's 8 or 30 GB. I want it to be 100. So basically, this is the command. In my case, since I'm using on this device, because it's on Ubuntu, that's going to be the device. That's the device name, and pretty much this is the command to say, okay, start my new instance with 100 GB. Because otherwise, all the services will consume most of the disk, and the EC2 will fail because of disk issues. And then I don't want to manually go extend the volume. And then what we do, we capture the instance ID here. All right. So let's run this command. Basically, let's go and do an echo again on EC2 ID. So this is our EC2 ID that we're gonna then use into building up all the other services. So if you're gonna go here and do a refresh, yeah, we have a demo instance with the instance running, and let's click on it to see the attached values. The public IP is not attached. It's using a default public IP. We don't want that. We look at the security group. This is the security group that we created, basically, and the storage, if we want to validate, 100 GB. So that's good. Right. So far, so good. Now let's associate that public IP that we talked about. Let me clear this one out. I don't want that. Good. No, that was some testing. So basically what we do here, we're using the EC2 ID that we mentioned earlier. We capture here, and the allocation ID that we capture from the allocate address. And we're going to run this. It's going to give us a, just this output. For whatever reason, it's silly that it gives me an association ID, though I'm specifying no client page, meaning like I don't want any risk. Anyway, that's fine. So right now, if we go to the machine and we do a refresh, we can see the elastic IP change. So this is the elastic IP that we choose, basically. All right. And now, if you were to run this script in a single run, it will make you wait. So you see these sleep commands all over the place. Basically, I'm adding them to make sure that the services prior that are dependent on this, they're up and running. So what we're gonna do now we're gonna connect to the machine, and we're gonna copy these scripts. So if you look here, look at this path, chapter 7 EC2 scripts, and everything that is .sh, it's here. So this path, we're gonna copy all the content of that. We're gonna put it in the home directory of this user, and then what we're gonna do, we're gonna move this the content of this home directory that is .sh. We're gonna move it to opt scripts. Basically, we're creating a new folder. We're moving the contents from there to here, and then we make them executable. So let's run the first command so we can see how it is. And if you see here, I'm using the key that we generate. So this is going to be the key, and there's no path in front of it. Basically, the expectation is that the key, it's in my so if I do here, yeah, so that's good. The key should be in my direct path. Cool. So let me do clear so you guys can. Hopefully, this is big enough for people to see. All right. So here you're going to say yes. Basically, it's going to ask you add the fingerprint. So he copied everything there. Now we're gonna run the wrapper, which is gonna do the creation and the move and the changing of file type. It's gonna make it executable. Cool. Now everything is there. Next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna install Docker. So if you go to the same, basically right now we're running commands against the EC2 instance from my terminal, but he's gonna execute scripts that we have here. But you remember we copied them there previously. So if you go to setup Docker, this is what he's going to do. He's going to upgrade his repository. Sorry, he's going to download the, the repo, and then he's going to install Docker Community Edition. Simple as that. All right, so let's run this. Sorry about COVID is killing me. I'm joking. Whatever it is, it's on dry cough. All right, so this is gonna run. Next thing what we're gonna do, we're gonna set up Jenkins. So Jenkins is gonna be a Docker container here. We're gonna go to the script here, set up Jenkins. Basically, what we do here, we capture the public IP. The reason we capture the public IP is to give a good feedback when this happens, and it's important for you to capture the feedback in this log. We're gonna run Jenkins at port 88888. We're gonna run this container to always restart. Basically, if we're gonna kill the EC2 instance and we're gonna restart it, the services will come back to life. We're gonna export the initial password into our log for us to see, and then we run some we're gonna install the toolkit on Jenkins, basically. So if we probably this is confusing. Installing toolkit. If we're gonna go to our design here, we see that Jenkins communicates with NiFi Registry, but the way Jenkins communicates to NiFi Registry or other instances, I should have made different line, is through the intermediate, is through the use of the NiFi toolkit. So, and we're gonna see. I mean, if you're not aware of what NiFi toolkit, it's pretty much a utility wrapper that helps to programmatically communicate with NiFi and any type of NiFi resources. If it's NiFi registry, NiFi installation, or let's say, what is it, the other one? Yeah, that's about it. So yeah, the registry and the other type of NiFi. So that's the use here. And since it's running, it's going to be running from the Jenkins container, we want to have it in Jenkins container. So Jenkins can be pretty much able to communicate with our NiFi services and manage them. So we have Docker up and running, right? So the way, that's the assumption, right? So right now, let's go and run Jenkins. All right, so you can see that Docker is up and running. He said, I can't find the image. Now we're downloading the image locally. So download is complete. The internet is pretty fast on Amazon, so you don't have to actually wait that much. So this is our image. Cool. He's telling us, hey, this is going to be your URI, access the service, and this is going to be our initial password. So what we're going to do, we're quickly going to copy this input. Should make a new, paste it there. And next thing he's going to do, he's going to download some packages because we have the update command at the end. Oh. And he's going to set up the NiFi toolkit. The NiFi toolkit that we see here, if you see here, NiFi toolkit chosen is the latest version at this point. It's 1161. All right, so if you see, I haven't went through the Jenkins script here to show you guys what's happening there when we install the toolkit. Basically, there is another script here called install toolkit on Jenkins, so you can find it here. You see, we're downloading it and we're unzipping it. And then what we do, we create 3 configuration files, 3 client for NiFi and 1 for the registry. And we create those files. And we have a simple bash function here that will do property replace. Basically looks into a file that is a key value pair and it will update those values. So what we do here, we change the base URL of our registry config. So basically Jenkins is going to use this client configuration to know where is what, right? So because the public IP changes, unless if you're doing it like I'm doing it, you're not going through a DNS route and all the other blah blah blah, or through a CloudFormation setup, which I think would have been far-fetched, but probably in the future we're going to do that. So going back to this, let's go ahead and before we continue with the script, let's open the browser and actually make sure that whatever we did, it is correct so far. Cool. So we get some good response. You remember that password that we copied from the log? This is what we have to put in. We don't want to save. And now we're going to go through install suggested plugin. And now we're going to leave this as it is because it will take a couple of minutes. Going back to my script, to the next step. So we install Docker, we install Jenkins. Now let's go ahead and run NiFi registry setup. Basically the same. Right now we're still at the same location in my command line. Let's run this. And if we're going to go to set up NiFi registry script, basically it's creating a Docker container and enable this port 18080. And he's going to give us a response saying, hey, this is your NiFi registry where he's available at. Basically using the same public IP that we have there. So if we're going to go this, NiFi registry should be up and running for us. This is a very small service. All right, unable to connect. Yeah, all right, cool. So NiFi registry up, Jenkins is up. Happy days. Let's go to the next step now. Let me close this one. Now let's build the NiFi production staging and dev. So this is a single script. I'm gonna run it, and then we're gonna go through the script to show you guys what happens there. Cool. So NiFi setup. So basically, if you look at this one, we capture the public IP because we wanna give it feedback. We will install one container called NiFi prod running in port 8080 using the latest. What we're going to do here, we're going to disable HTTPS because I didn't want to go to the hustle of keys and other stuff. I think that's relevant in future tutorials when people want to go really into details. But now we're going to run on an unsecure installation just to show the capabilities of NiFi, not necessarily how strictly safe it is. So basically we're running this command 3 times, but we are instantiating the Docker container with different names and different ports. Cool. And then when we say, hey, we open NiFi at this port. But keep in mind, NiFi takes a bit of time to be available. So what we're going to do, we're going to just copy the URLs. We're going to run this one. I'll be impressed if it's, yeah, he's not yet running. 80, let's add also 81. And also let's add 82. That's our dev environment. But let's wait for them. In the meantime, there's still more work to be done here. Basically, what we're gonna do next, in the next step, we're gonna set up the registry clients. So the registry clients, if we're gonna look at our designs, here our design NiFi registry. In order to communicate with the NiFi instance and vice versa, there is a controller service in NiFi that has to say, hey, this is my registry called XYZ. Basically, it's like a connection string, I would say. And going back to our script, let's see what this run setup registry client. So run setup registry client, basically, it's a script that we have to copy. We copy it on the NiFi registry installation and run this command. We're gonna say NiFi registry create registry client with this base URL. The base URL, if you look at it, it matches our NiFi instances installation and pointing to our single registry client URL. If you have multiple, yeah, whatever, in my case, I have only one. And we're gonna give it a name of prod. So for that, we have to have the instances up and running. So let's see if this is up and running. All right, so we have production up and running. It's a good example. The way you see this on the canvas is here. You go to this burger menu, and in the controller setting, you click on the controller settings and then navigate to registry clients. And here is where you're gonna see your registry clients pop up. We could easily manually do it, but the whole point is not for you to put your fingers in, And ultimately, when you're gonna have thousands and thousands of assets here, doing it manually is gonna be a pain. We humans are not very good with details. Computers, they don't give a shit. They're good at it. So that's why we use programming to do that for us. So let's go and set up the registry client now. Going back to our main script, let's run the script. So now he's going to add it to production. You see, we got a good response. We got another good response. And all of our environment now have a registry link to them. So if you're going to go to this service, this is our production environment running on port 00. Control settings, registry. We see that we have our production registry, which is this one. Going to staging as well, going to the same step, control settings, client, same thing. So success as well, production, sorry, not here, not provenance, control settings, registry. Good, so happy days, we're good to go. Now the final step, that's it. It will tell us, hey, the final step for us is to complete the Jenkins installation. So let's go ahead and jump into that really quick because all the plugins are probably complete. So the plugins are complete. Now what we need to do, we need to come up with an admin user and password. Really difficult. In my case, it's going to be admin all over the place because I'm a lazy one. Admin.com. He's not going to complain about it. You could have skipped and choose another name. Now you choose the instance configuration. In my case, I'm going to use the same URL. Finish and start using Jenkins. Now as a short introduction to Jenkins is very straightforward. What we're going to do, we're going to create a new item. We're going to create an item of type folder and we're going to call it NiFi. Cool. And again, NiFi. This is going to be our placeholders for our, let's say, when you're going to go dashboard, NiFi, and this is where we're going to create our pipeline. Now, you want to install new plugins. Jenkins is full of plugins. You want to go to manage Jenkins here on the side and manage plugins. And here you'll see it's installed that you have, some of them are disabled and available. One that I like to install is the active choice one, which is it? Right, active choice. So the way you do it, pretty much, you're going to install it without restart because we don't want to restart it. And you're going to go to the steps here. It's going to give you a feedback saying, hey, active choice is pending success. So good. That's it. We have active choice plugin installed. All right. So just to recap now, what we've done in this story, because this is very long. You can see the instances are up and running. Actually, before that, let me go to the utility script, show you guys what happens there. So the utility script here, it's an easy script for you to stop the instance. Basically, we use the tags, you remember, to capture the instance name. So if we, let's say I'll close this one. Actually, let me terminate this right now, if I'll open a new terminal and I'll do an echo EC2 ID, I'm not going to get nothing, right? Because the terminal got exploded. Now, you want to do, you want to capture the instance ID, and then if you're going to go EC2 instance ID. All right, so that's the instance ID that our NiFi runs on. And let's say I want to stop it. This will be the command, stop it. Then you want to start it. If you want to start anything, all the services will come back online automatically because of the way we've built them. We have restart always and registry. The only thing is here, it's the public IP. If you're not going to release it, then the same public IP will be used, because that's why I chose to not be a random public IP and be something that we have a control over it. Another thing is that elastic IP will cost you money. It's $1 a month. I don't know if it's much for you. If it's much for you, then yeah, just get rid of it. If it's not, just keep it. It's less pain. So going back to our util script, so let's go ahead and say let's stop it. This will stop the thing. If at any point in time when you're doing the setup, let's say your terminal disappears, this is the only thing you have to set up. Capture the public IP and the key name of the instance, and then rerun the entire script. Basically, that's required. That's the only requirement. So for me, what I'll do, I'll go ahead and stop the instance. Capture the instance ID and then stop. You see right now, it changed from running state to stopping state. And if we're going to go to the EC2 UI, we can see that it can stop. It will take a bit of time to stop it because he sees that there's services there. So if you see, if we run this refresh, they'll still be up and running, you know, because keep in mind, we're running on a container. So there's services. It takes a bit of time for the services to be shut down. So recapping, let's go to, and I'm sorry about that, I went too fast. It's been already 37 minutes of this video or so. And you know, people don't love long videos. But hey, if you're here to learn, then you're not wasting your time. Cool, so what we did so far, we set up our NiFi installation running on a Docker container using an EC2 machine. And then we went through a series of scripts to build up all the resources. We took the long path because I wanted to explain everything that happens in the script. If you want to go the easy way, just run the setup script end to end. This will take probably 10 minutes. And you don't have to listen to my boring voice. Cool. In the next tutorial, we're going to start a journey into NiFi and go through all the components available based on my, I would say, 7 or 8 years of experience working in NiFi and massive, let's say, companies that, I don't know, we move hundreds of gigabytes a day to NiFi. So I'll try to expose as much as that experience with you guys instead of just building fancy shining stuff, you know. It's because data engineering is not fancy. Data engineering is all about building the right tool and provide value. That's it. Don't think about nothing else. I'm not going to go over the local Docker setup. This is up for you guys. The reason is Docker on my Mac machine is playing tricks. For whatever reason, I've been struggling to run NiFi on ARM. I'm not going to go into that, but the scripts are there. You can pretty much set up your Docker and run it through the scripts. And if you get any failures, just let me know. I'll gladly jump in and help you guys. Drop me a comment. Cool. So that's a wrap for us. If you guys have any comments or requests, that would be appreciated because it will give me focus to know on what topics to choose further on. I'll have some in mind, but you know, extras will also be good. All right, cool. Thank you so much, guys, and consider also subscribing to get notification from my new content. And if you don't consider subscribe, that's fine. You know, I do this out of passion. This is not a financial mean for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.